Phil Picciotto.
There are sports agents and sports agencies. Then there is Phil Picciotto and Octagon, the founder and president. That's a compliment. How are you? You okay?
I'm very well, Rick. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. The philosophy or the theme that dominates a lot of what's happening at this EverFi event, and as well as the whole Power Sports Show we're doing, is sports philanthropy. You've had a chance to guide agencies, create agencies. Give us kind of a snapshot of how the power of sports could be harnessed for social good, and maybe what the difference is today as opposed to years ago.
Sports, as you know, is a universal connector,
Right.
and it's become a real business and a legitimate marketing discipline. So on the talent side, there's the power of wealth and celebrity.
Right.
You can make direct contribution to enhance the world, and you can make indirect by amplifying the wealth that you have. On the corporate side, everyone wants to connect with communities, be relevant to their customer base. Sports is a perfect opportunity and platform for philanthropy.
So of all of the athletes that you've been involved in, involved with indirectly or directly, give me some examples of athletes that have inspired you the most for what they've done and how they've done it.
Without naming anybody in particular, because there are so many of them that have done great things, I would say that athletes, when they're entering a career, often want to give a donation to their new community and also to the community from which they've come. And as they grow the arc of their profession, they tend to use donor-advised funds, and some of them even develop foundations. Some of those foundations are very big, even global, and give an athlete a platform even after a playing career. So those are the ones who inspire me, and more importantly, they inspire the world.
Well, inspiring the world is critical, and there are also maybe some of the, naysayers wrong word, but there's some foundations that don't work out as well. Any advice from a philanthropic perspective about how you deal with your new wealth and make sure you manage it not only for your own good, but for the good of potential benefactors?
Well, the first underlying advice, as with anything, and you exemplify that, is if one's going to do something, do it right.
Yeah.
Get professional advice. Second, I would say there isn't a singular way of doing something. So whether it's a direct donation or whether it's combining with other people or whether it's creating an entity to stand the test of time, all of those can be appropriate. One just has to align interests and make sure that things are suited to what you hope your goals are going to be, because a failed objective doesn't help anyone, especially in this area.
Well put. And speaking of appropriate goals, you basically started the curve, created the standard for doing great by doing good in many ways. The elimination of tobacco-related advertising in racing, part of that. The healthy drinking and drinks in New York public schools, another part of that. So how do you make sure that corporate messages resonate the right way, even though in some contexts corporate messages that will reach different demographics that might be worse or not as good would generate more money, let's say? How do you deal with that conundrum?
Well, again, first it's management by objectives.
Yeah.
It's not management by a return on anything other than what the company wants to achieve. And then it's all about the execution. Once the strategy is set, once the mission is set, it's all about executing properly.
Octagon has been an elevator speech in the leading leadership of the world's agency work, event work, development work, social work. A lot of that has your stamp on it, but just talk a little bit about the agency business in general and how you've been so successful.
It really has very little to do with me. It has to do with people. People have an enormous amount of thought potential and a willingness to do good in the world. And our job is really to find the right fit for everyone, whether it's a corporation trying to expand a product line, enter a new territory, reach a certain kind of audience as the world continues to change, or whether it's an athlete or entertainer or a broadcaster who wants to imprint a message or help to deliver somebody else's message. I like to say that if you're the second best point guard in the NBA, you're destined for a great career, with one exception: if you're on the same team as the best point guard in the NBA. So finding the right fit for everybody is critically important.
And also, today may be a little different than when some of us broke into the business, or certainly a while ago. what are the key differences? For example, how important do you think is social media doing it right helps the business of improving an athlete's image, of course, philanthropy in general, kind of that whole broad notion?
All of these advances, in quotes, in the world also have potential detriments. So social media eliminates the filters. But if the filters are going to be eliminated, one has to be consistent, one has to be authentic, one has to be very prepared, because the scrutiny that one is going to get, even if one is exactly on message, is heightened through social media. That's a very big change in the world over the last 10 years in particular.
You've honored me by being a contributor in the Sport Business Handbook and industry leaders over the last 50 years, and I really do appreciate that and want to know from that perspective where you think the next X years are going in sports. We pretty much have a handle on the last 50. Where's the next X number going?
Exclusive rights are going to become more and more valuable, I think. The opening of the whole forum of betting to become more regulated and legalized and expansive. The United States is going to catch up with the rest of the world in that regard, but it carries enormous risks to the credibility of sport as well. So there are balances that are going to have to be managed, and those will determine the future fate, I think, of professional sports.
And hopefully the keepers of the history and perspective in the business will continue to help manage like you. It's been an honor, Phil. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Rick.